President Obama's legacy on the environment will be defined by the Keystone XL pipeline, Paris Climate Agreement, and the Clean Power Plan. In this keynote address, Bill Becker, Executive Director of the Presidential Climate Action Project, will provide an update on the Clean Power Plan and explore opportunities for its implementation. Becker's organization is now in its 10th year of developing policies that the President can implement with executive action. He is a senior advisor at Natural Capitalism Solutions and a consultant for Colorado State University's Center of the New Energy Economy. I'm pleased to introduce Bill Becker.
I'm not going to talk about that at all, because I've been inspired by the previous panels, and I'm going to use my prerogative up here with the clicker to offer some responses and perhaps a different perspective. I want to start out specifically with some of the comments that were made by our conservative colleagues in the panel prior to this one, about energy subsidies, for example. Those who believe in free markets don't understand that they don't exist. We have subsidized energy ever since this country began, in one form or another. Free market principles exist, and instead of talking about eliminating clean energy subsidies or renewable energy subsidies, let's talk about eliminating them all. What if we proposed in Congress that fossil energy subsidies be reduced on the same timetable Congress has decided to reduce wind and solar? That has to do with market efficiency. It has to do with correcting a price signal that's been broken and distorted forever, because the hidden costs of carbon, but also the hidden subsidies that so many people don't know about. Words. I don't want to hear either a liberal or a conservative say, step into my echo chamber and use my vocabulary. We need to step outside our echo chambers and find a common vocabulary. Thirdly, what do I write? I wrote this down really badly. Let me see. Oh. If you don't want to be branded as anti-science, then criticize the people in your group who are anti-science. Straighten them out. Now, what I want to talk about is spins off of that. It's the idea of common ground. It's the idea of stepping outside those boxes. It's the idea of taking control of the message. If you're a Democrat or Republican and you don't like the message that's coming out. How many of you regard yourselves as warriors? Come on, how many? Fighting for the cause. All right. The warrior tradition is a very honorable tradition in its highest sense. Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi. It's good to be a warrior. I consider myself one, although I use the pen and words more than I do other things. We've seen some really nice warriors. We've seen people arrested for the cause. Even the polar bear got arrested, along with Bill McKibben and others in this picture. We've seen women power. We've seen beach power. We've seen things that reminded me about the Vietnam War. I was there, and I also covered the war at home. We've seen confrontations. We've even seen grandma power. This is a picture of some grandmas who sat on a railroad track in Canada to prevent oil shipments by train. You've heard of boots on the ground. This is from Paris. These are shoes on the ground. One way of protesting what was going on prior to the agreement. And I really agree with this. It makes so much sense, what we're talking about with clean energy, that I wish I would see. I want more of this, by the way. I believe in warriors. But the placards should be talking in common language, not demonizing the other side. How about save the economy, cut carbon, that kind of thing on those placards, with messages that are common ground messages. We see demonization happening, of course, in the political races. I wish they were more civilized, and perhaps if we voted for civilized discourse, we'd get it, but we don't. And the media panders to this kind of thing. They love to sell media with that kind of thing. And my question is, can we reach a peacemaking stage as well as the warrior stage? Can we be, some of us, be peacemakers? And some of us are getting to be that way, especially in the Republican Party right now, or not especially, but in addition to the Republican Party. There are Republicans stepping out of the closet or stepping out of their silence to criticize those, or at least contradict those who don't agree with them in their own party, and who use the words climate change and climate action. There are organizations on the left side of this slide that are fighting for climate change, that are conservative organizations or representing people who are considered traditionally to be conservatives. Chris Gibson, I'm sure many of you know, a Republican in the House, introduced a resolution that flatly acknowledged a marked increase in extreme weather events, negative impacts, and so on, and resolved that all the House members, Democrat and Republican, would work to create and support economically viable alternatives. And here are the Republicans on that resolution. I can hardly see this. You've probably heard about the 21 Florida mayors who wrote to the organizers of the presidential debates on both sides and said, we're being flooded by this problem. You got to at least ask the candidates about it. This was a story in Newsweek that we're seeing this historic movement, it calls it, among Republicans in the House, where anyone who defied the party's message for a long time ended up with an office next to the boiler in the basement of the Capitol. But more and more are coming out, and they're finding security in their colleagues, their other colleagues who are willing to come out. And here are the members of the First House Climate Solutions Caucus, bipartisan group. There was an article by this fellow, Professor Andrew Hoffman, that talked about 4 signs that conservatives believe in climate change. And by the way, I don't like believe. This is not a matter of faith. It's a matter of science. But business leaders are speaking out, so are faith leaders, Republican leaders, and voters, which I'll get to in a moment. He contends, and I would agree, that we can't solve this problem without taking all of these views into account and having not a war of words, but a conversation of thoughts, thinking about solutions that resonate with both conservative and progressive values. I'm not talking about compromise. I'm talking about finding the values and the programs where the values coincide, where the programs coincide. It hasn't worked real well in the past. Maggie, are you here? She's not in the room. I think she had something to do with this. You may remember this ad a few years ago talking about how this was not a partisan issue. Newt Gingrich got in a lot of trouble with his party when he did that because he didn't have that support from his colleagues. I think that's changing. Gene talked about some of the polls that Gallup has taken. Excuse me 1 minute. By the way, I often forget to breathe in these talks, so if I faint, go on without me. Gallup found some responses in regard to climate change across the political spectrum that were record levels, as Gene said, including the views about the effects of global warming and when they'll happen, how much people worry about it, and the perceived cause being man-made instead of something else. The numbers are the highest in Gallup's polling history. And in this chart, you'll see that everyone except the independents in that second category, in every category across the political spectrum, in the past year, the numbers have gone up. So we're seeing the voting population changing. And what we have to do is challenge the candidates to listen to the people and the people to vote for the candidates who listen to them. Right now, we don't. And I want to say about the poll that Gene held up on the ranking, they're about the most bogus form of public research that I've ever seen because they pretend that all of these 20 categories are separate from each other, and they're not. They're all linked. And the message we need to do, among others, is to take those top 4 or 5 issues and show how they're absolutely dependent on a stable climate and on clean energy. We can't have a good economy without clean energy, and in the face of all these extreme weather events and the federal spending associated with them and all of that. We need to show the link. We need to show they're all holistically combined. This was Gallup's conclusion after this poll in last March, record or near record high belief that it's happening, concerned about the issue. And interestingly, it said, it thinks it's the weather that's changing people's minds. Not the science, not the politics, but the weather. Now, I'm among those who've been saying for a long time that it's inevitable that people are going to get this and that public policy is going to change because it's going to become so bad that no one can deny it anymore. And the issue is whether we're going to come to that realization fast enough to prevent irreversible and unbearable climate change. Well, it's beginning to happen. People are recognizing that the weather appears to be changing, and that's changing minds. This year's election challenge, as I see it, and Chip, if you would, take all the rotten fruit and pointed objects out of the audience for this slide because People may not like it, but I don't think the challenge this year is to defeat Republicans or Democrats, is to defeat political gridlock, is to defeat ignorance about this issue, is to defeat extremism on either side, is to defeat stovepipes. Do you know about the echo chambers? Have you all heard that theory? Where more and more in this country, people tend to go to the media that supports their preconceived notions. And you get an echo effect where people's opinions are reinforced and reinforced until they become adamant and locked into an extreme and irresolvable position. The challenge this year also is to prevent backsliding. The next president, whoever it is, cannot be allowed to undo what Obama has done. He might or she might find a better way, but we should not backslide. Now, the Presidential Climate Action Project, which you heard about in the introduction, started 10 years ago. David Orr back there is one of the founders of that organization. And he suggested in 2007 that we develop a 100-day action plan for whoever won that election in 2008 to let them know what they could do using executive authorities, not relying on Congress. And that turned out to be a little bit prescient. So for the past 10 years, we've been developing recommendations for the Obama administration on how to use its executive authorities on clean energy and climate. This year, we're changing our mission. We've put together this bipartisan advisory committee to search for common ground, to come up with policies that both sides should be able to agree with and that are consistent with their values. And so far, so good. We've identified, or this group has identified, these potential common ground subjects. And I'm in the job of writing position papers or issue papers on each of these topics right now. I invite you to go to our website, peakcap2016.org, and add your 2 cents to these papers so that they can be enriched, and I'm sure that's what you'll do. But I've started putting it up with national defense, which we heard about earlier, and more of these will be going up in weeks to come. So, common ground. We can find, I think, reasons to support climate action that appeal to the values on both sides, and that's what we need to search for. Now, there are some people who will never be convinced, and it's more important to have emotional intelligence or emotional correctness than political correctness. It's important to listen to the other side, but there are people who will never be convinced. I wouldn't waste my time, frankly, because there are some people who really, through vested interest or political interest, are really not going to change. Work on those who are willing to talk and find that common ground. We're seeing Republicans emerge. I know there's Democrats and progressives that value that strategy. So we're working on it. I hope you do too. I think that's the right way to go. Thank you.